Time by Colin Tan. When will this class end? I feel minutes until the hour clicking, ticking by, like the grasshopper in the matchbox we caught yesterday while skipping through the field after school. Seems such a long time ago when the kids were in school, isn't it? Today I'm going to share some tips about reading with you. Tip number 1, read with your kids. Reading with your kids is important because it shows them that time is important to you and you put it aside to read and enjoy a book with them. The other thing about reading aloud to your kids is that you provide a model of what reading looks like to them. When reading aloud, you don't always have to read new books. You can read old books and reread stories that the children love. For example, I have these Osborne readers. My kids have had them since kindergarten and I've been reading it aloud for a really long time. They're in primary 3 and 5 now, but they still love listening to these stories. The other good thing about it can be done in 10 minutes and you can get through many stories that way. The other thing to note about reading aloud is that it's not just limited to younger kids. Older kids love having read alouds too. The other advantage of having read alouds with older kids is that you can often motivate them to pick up a book that they haven't thought of or that they might find too difficult. For example, I bought my daughter this book, Alice Miranda at School, on Valentine's Day. She didn't get started on it immediately. She loved the cover, but she thought the book looked a little bit thick. But when I read the first 3 chapters, she decided she really wanted to read on and finished the rest of the book in 3 days. Another example, just last week I decided to read The Little Prince to my kids. It's one of my favorite books. I read 3 chapters, which is about 5 or 6 pages, showed the kids the pictures, and my son said, "Read on, please." And I said, "No, it's bedtime, so you've got to go to bed." But he was up the next morning and he finished the book before starting his HBL for the day. Next tip number 2. Watch movies, play games, and read. Yes, you heard me right. There are a lot of books that are related to movies and games, and if your kids watch these movies or play these games, it would be great to encourage them to read book-related stuff. For example, there's this series on Netflix called The Last Kids on Earth. So my kids started reading the books because they had books on it as well. If you don't know where to find the books, especially now that bookstores and libraries are closed, one way to get books is from the National Library Board e-collection. I'm looking at my iPad right now. My son has been using it to read, and you can borrow up to 16 books on the app. So here's what my son has been reading. Wrecking Ball. Not sure what that is. The Ultimate Unofficial Guide to Strategies for Minecrafters. So you see there's a game connection there. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Movie connection. Sherlock Sam and the Obento Bonanza in Tokyo. That's a Singapore book and a very good read. Sherlock Sam and the Mysterious Mastermind in Seoul. The Terrible Two's Last Laugh. The Terrible Two Go Wild. The Terrible Two Get Worse. As you can see, series books are a great way to get the kids reading more and more. It's good practice for them and they enjoy it. Now, my next tip is this, and it's my final tip. Create a reading pile. The thing about books, for those of you who are fortunate to have a large number of books at home, is that they do get buried and kids forget about them. Or maybe there's a book that you bought a long time ago that the kids haven't been reading. Take them out, put them on the table, and I guarantee you that one day your child will pick it up and they will say, "Hey, this book looks interesting. I've read it before, I haven't read it, but maybe I'll try looking at it." So, those are my tips for reading. Hope you've enjoyed it and that it's useful for you during this HBL period.